Mr. Lee.
Two, I guess, interrelated questions. I wanted to know if you can confirm that the Secretary General has invited, well, first, does he have any comment on the U.S. sanctions on DPRK and Kim Jong Un in particular as an individual that were announced yesterday?
Obviously, we're aware of the recent round of sanctions imposed by the United States on the DPRK. Unilateral sanctions are a matter for states concerned. As far as Secretary General is concerned, the Security Council has discussed the human rights situation in the DPRK several times, based, I think, on the very powerful report by the Independent Commission of Inquiry 2 years ago. The UN system has also been working to follow up on these findings and recommendations of the report. The Secretary General believes that discussion of human rights concerns allow for a more comprehensive assessment and action when addressing security and stability concerns on the Korean Peninsula, and he hopes that member states, including China, uses its influence to encourage the DPRK authorities to cooperate with international human rights mechanisms.
Okay, thanks. And I wanted to know, can you confirm at least two papers in South Korea have reported that Secretary General has invited Kim Jong Un to attend this World Conference on Sustainable Transport in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan in November. Is that the case?
I'm not aware of the particular invitation. I know of the conference, and as the Secretary General for these international conferences invites all the heads of states and leaders to attend. But I don't know of the particular invitation.
At least both the stories that I've seen report this as some attempt by him to bring the two countries of the Koreas together.
I've said what I can safely say and what I know. Mr. Lee.
Okay, great. I wanted to, I mean, you'd said yes on Friday. You'd said that you'd say the nationality. I wondered, can you say when the Burundian mission was informed that its personnel are charged with these rapes?
It was informed either today or Tuesday.
Okay. What I wanted to know is, does either what was just asked about torture in Burundi or these new sexual allegation claims, is DPKO still intending to bring in 800 more Burundian troops in September?
I think we have to let the investigation go through on this particular case. As for any country, all options remain on the table, including repatriation. Mr. Lee.
Sure. Some peacekeeping questions. Maybe I missed it. Did you say anything about these Dutch peacekeepers in Mali that were reportedly killed in
No, I know the peacekeeping mission in Mali issued a statement outlining the way these two Dutch peacekeepers were accidentally killed in a mortar accident. So they put out a statement. Obviously, our thoughts are with their comrades, their families, and the people and government of the Netherlands, and of course our colleagues in the mission.
Sure. And you'd read now this statement about WOW, but there's still no UN estimate of the number of people killed, and there's still these divergent. Does the UN intend to actually come up with a figure? Are they investigating what happened?
Obviously, the UN is looking into it. The mission is looking into it. As we said, the SRSG herself is going, and as soon as we have something to share, we will do so.
Is the UN bringing media to WOW, and if so, how do they decide which ones?
Matthew, I think you can call the mission and find out. I'm really not going to get into the granularity of what our colleagues do and how they do it.
As an overall policy, I guess I'm saying enough time has gone by that the UN's failure to come up with an estimate of casualties, which it does even in countries
Matthew,
where it doesn't have missions.
UN facilitates media in peacekeeping operations, and they will, and as our colleagues in South Sudan do. As for this particular trip, that's a phone call you need to make.
Sure, I'm asking you about the number of people killed and why.
No, and I've told you, and
DPKO.
I've told you,
Sure.
I have not gotten that information from the mission.
Right,
As soon as I get information, I try to bring it up here.
And the question about Yemen that I asked you in writing on Tuesday, I wanted to know whether the delegation from Sana'a, a number of the delegates are saying that in the Kuwait talks, they received substantially less funding to be participating in the talks than they had in Geneva. In fact, some of them took personal loans.
My understanding is that the government of Kuwait provided the accommodations, provided the venue for the talks. The UN itself is not responsible or did not provide, DSA is not responsible for providing a DSA for the delegations. that's a question you need to ask the delegations themselves.
What's the size of Ismail ul Sheikh Ahmed's team, and are they all still in Kuwait? Where are they now?
I don't know. I don't think they're all still in Kuwait because the talks have been on a pause for a little bit. Okay, Matthew, last question.
Yeah, a U.S. question. Over the holiday or in the last 48 hours, 2 African Americans have been, in a very high-profile way, killed. Philandro Castile in Minnesota and Alton Sterling in Louisiana. One was captured on film, the whole incident. And I wanted to know, although these might seem to be disparate incidents, what does the Secretary General think if the United States has enough protections for particularly members of minority or other groups being shot by police?
First of all, our condolences goes to the families of the victims involved in both shootings. I think for anybody who's seen the videos, they are extremely disturbing, to say the least. And we would hope that each of these cases are investigated thoroughly in order to find out what happened, and also to establish if there is in fact any pattern. Any
other questions? Anyone else? Matthew, one more?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, this is unrelated. When previous PGA John Ash died, Morgan Zukatov had put out a statement, saying, noting that he faced criminal charges in U.S. courts and saying, quote, despite the many as yet unproven allegations made against him, Mr. Ash was for many years hardworking, etc. I noticed that in the session held in the GA, even the existence of the case really wasn't mentioned at all. And I wanted to know, what was the difference between these two communications? Was there can you explain that? And do you have any comment on the expansion of the case on the same day, June 30th, in the Southern District to include a wider time frame running till September 2015 and to include UNDP?
I have no comment on the judicial process that's being run in the United States. In terms of the statement and the tone of the event in the General Assembly, I think it's just purely the timing partly. I mean, we put out a statement fairly quickly after we heard of his passing, and I suppose in the General Assembly, people want to, all people that knew him want to commemorate him in a way publicly. And I suppose they didn't want to bring up, other things in that context. So, I mean, you really have to ask them and the member states, why they spoke the way they did.
Right. I guess I'm asking because it turned out that Mr. Lukatov has been kind of the point man. Like, the Secretary General hasn't really answered about the case. I remember him holding the press conference here when the case was announced. And I guess I wanted to know, given that the case now includes UNDP by name in the superseding indictment, and given that one of the other candidates was the chief of staff of Ban Ki-moon during the time frame involved, do you expect this to come up in this debate on July 12th? Do you see it as a relevant issue in choosing the next Secretary General?
My suspicion is that there are much broader, bigger issues to be discussed in this very short event. And that may, I mean, it's really a question that, we're still receiving the questions. So it may come up, but, obviously the UN's got so many things to deal with. That's a very specific case. It's in many ways sub judice. It's going through the courts at the moment. And I'm sure that there are probably other places to debate the merits of that process. And so I'd be surprised if it came up in a very short town hall event with SG candidates when there are so many issues that the UN's dealing with broadly.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.